Alabama Resources LLC. Employee Orientation Safety Training. Alabama Resources employees will follow these safe practice rules, render every possible aid to safe operations, and report all unsafe conditions or practices to their supervisor. Failure to abide by the code of safe practices may result in disciplinary action up to and including termination. Supervisors will insist that employees observe and obey every rule, regulation, and order necessary to the safe conduct of the work, and will take such action necessary to obtain compliance. If you are unsure of the safe method to do your job, stop and ask your supervisor. Ignorance is no excuse for a safety violation. All employees will be given frequent accident prevention instructions. Instructions, practice drills and articles concerning workplace safety and health will be given at least once every working day. No one will knowingly be permitted to work while the employee's ability or alertness is impaired by fatigue, illness, and prescription or over-the-counter drugs. Employees who are suspected of being under the influence of drugs or alcohol, or impaired by fatigue or an illness, will be prohibited from working. Persons with symptoms of alcohol and/or drug abuse are encouraged to discuss personal or work-related problems with their supervisor or employer. Alabama Resources LLC has zero tolerance for workplace violence and harassment. Workplace violence and harassment includes but is not limited to intimidation, threats, physical attack, property damage, and includes acts of violence committed by employees, customers, relatives, acquaintances, or strangers against company property or in company vehicles. All employees are encouraged to report to a supervisor any possibility of workplace violence and harassment. All reports will be confidential. Employees should be alert to see that all guards and other protective devices are in proper places and adjusted, and will report deficiencies. Approved protective equipment will be worn in specified work areas. Horseplay, scuffling, fighting and other acts that tend to have an adverse influence on the safety or well-being of the employees are prohibited. Do not run on the job site or in the shop or office area. Do not distract others while working. Employees will not enter manholes, underground vaults, chambers, tanks, silos, or other similar places that receive little ventilation, unless it has been determined that it is safe to enter. Materials, tools, or other objects will not be thrown from buildings or structures until proper precautions are taken to protect others from the falling objects. Employees will cleanse thoroughly after handling hazardous substances, and follow special instructions from authorized sources. Gasoline or other flammable liquids will not be used for cleaning purposes. Possession of firearms, weapons, illegal drugs, or alcoholic beverages on company or customer property or the workplace is strictly prohibited. Personal protective equipment, PPE. Use the correct PPE for each job assignment. If you do not know, ask. PPE will be maintained in good condition, cleaned, and stored properly. ANSI-approved safety glasses must be worn when working with power tools, compressed air, or gases, chemicals or any other item that creates an eye injury hazard. Face shields with safety glasses are recommended when grinding or working with hazardous chemicals. Hearing protectors must be worn when working with loud equipment. Long pants of heavy-duty material must be worn. No shorts or sweatpants are allowed. Do not wear loose, torn or frayed clothing, jewelry items, or long hair unless contained in a hairnet, while operating any machine that could cause entanglement. If required, wear NIOSH-approved respirators when applying adhesives, paint, welding, grinding or working with chemicals. Facial hair may not be permitted in certain circumstances. It is required for employees to wear industrial work shoes in the shop and on the job site. The shoes must have complete leather uppers and skid-resistant soles and be in good condition. Steel toe protection is recommended. Athletic-style shoes, tennis shoes, open-toe shoes, plastic or vinyl shoes or shoes with decorative accessories are not allowed. Always tie your footwear securely. Hard hats must be used to eliminate these risks. Proper selection is an important factor in providing adequate protection. Types of protective headgear. Hard hat type designations 1 and 2 determine helmet shape. Type 1. These hard hats have a full brim of not less than 1¼ inches wide. Type 2. These hard hats are brimless, except for a front bill, and have a peak ridge extending forward from the crown. Electrical safety. Only trained, qualified, and authorized employees are allowed to make electrical repairs or work on electrical equipment or installations. All electrical equipment and systems will be treated as energized until tested or otherwise proven to be de-energized, and will be de-energized prior to the commencement of any work. All equipment will be locked out to protect against accidental or inadvertent operation when such operation could cause injury to personnel. Safety grounds will always be used where there is a danger of shock from backfeeding or other hazards. Polyester clothing or other flammable types of clothing will not be worn near electrical circuits. Cotton clothing is much less likely to ignite from arc blast. Employees working on live circuits will be provided Nomex or equivalent fire-resistant clothing. Always exercise caution when energizing electrical equipment or installations. Take steps to protect yourself and other employees from arc blast and exploding equipment in the event of a fault. All power tools will be grounded or double insulated. Tools with defective cords or wiring will not be used. Extension and temporary power cords must be heavy-duty and grounded. Frayed or defective cords will not be used. Suitable temporary barriers or barricades will be installed when access to opened enclosures containing exposed energized equipment is not under the control of an authorized person. Electrical installations must be protected from accidental contact by enclosures or tight-fitting covers. Circuits will not be overloaded with equipment or extension cords. Metal measuring tapes, fish tapes, ropes or other metal devices are prohibited where they may contact energized parts of equipment or circuits. Hazardous materials and chemicals. Read all warning labels before using any chemicals, and handled in accordance with the MSDS and label. Eye protection must be worn when working with hazardous materials or chemicals. Mixing of chemicals is prohibited at all times unless required by the label. Before you mix, review all MSDS. Always wash your hands thoroughly after handling chemicals and before eating or smoking, even if you were wearing protective gloves. Never use solvents for hand cleaning, use the non-toxic hand cleaners. Store all hazardous materials properly in suitable containers that are properly labeled. Use chemicals only in well-ventilated areas. Do not disturb any asbestos. Do not cut or weld stainless steel or galvanized metal without respiratory protection. These items create toxic fumes. Work with lead, asbestos, cadmium, and other toxic compounds require special precautions. Do not attempt to perform this work without special equipment and training. If any employee is unsure, ask a supervisor first. Fire prevention and housekeeping. Always take precautions to prevent fires which may be started, particularly from oily waste, rags, gasoline, flammable liquids, acetylene torches, improperly installed electrical equipment, and trash. Firefighting equipment is to be inspected on a regular basis. All discharged, damaged, or missing equipment is to be immediately reported to a supervisor. Tampering with fire equipment is prohibited. Access to fire extinguishers must be kept clear at all times. Make note of the location of firefighting equipment in your work area. Smoking is prohibited within 20 feet of where flammable substances are present. In case of fire, employees will consider the safety of themselves and other individuals before saving property. Sharp wires or protruding nails must be kept bent. Fall protection. Fall protection, such as standard railings or a safety harness and lanyard, will be used at all times, when working 6 feet or more above the level below. Floor and wall openings, unfinished balconies, elevator shafts, and similar areas must be railed, covered, or barricaded to prevent falls. Never remove fall protection rails, covers, or barricades without permission from your foreman and special precautions. Always replace these items when finished with your task. All safety harnesses will be the full body type with a shock-absorbing lanyard attached to a substantial anchorage capable of supporting twice the maximum load. Lanyard will be attached at the wearer's upper back. Body belts are not to be worn as fall protection. Read and obey all manufacturer's instructions relating to your fall arrest system, safety harness and lanyard, and inspect all components of your harness and lanyard prior to each use and after a fall. Defective equipment is not to be used. Lanyard must be destroyed after a fall and never reused. Safety harnesses and lanyards should limit free fall distance to less than 4 feet and prevent contact with any level or objects below you. Never use any part of a fall arrest system, such as a harness or lanyard, to hoist materials or for any other purpose. Ladder safety. Inspect the ladder before using it. If it is broken, throw it out. Never repair a broken ladder, get a new one. Do not use A-frame ladders as straight ladders. Do not use metal ladders for electrical work. Do not place ladders in passageways, doorways, or any location where they might be hit or jarred, unless protected by barricades or guards. Ladders should only be placed on hard level surfaces. Clean or sweep the area where the ladder feet will be and make sure the rubber feet are in good shape. Ladder rungs and steps must be kept free of slippery substances. Arrange your work so you are able to face the ladder and use both hands while climbing. Climb the ladder, and then hoist the tools or equipment with a line or a hoisting device. Always use a commercially made, construction-grade ladder of the proper length for the work being performed. Secure portable ladders in place and at a pitch so the leveling indicator is in alignment or the distance from the wall to the base of the ladder is at least 1 foot for every 4 feet of height. Straight ladders will be tied off the top of the ladder to prevent slipping. Be aware of objects below you. Move or cover sharp objects in case you fall. Cap or bend all rebar. Do not stand on or work from the second rung from the top or above. Also do not reach too far from the ladder. Keep your belt buckle between the side rails. Extension ladders will extend at least 36 inches above the level being accessed. On all ladders, do not step on cross bracing that is not intended to be used for climbing. Boom and scissor lifts. Only trained and authorized employees are allowed to use boom or scissor lifts. If you are not trained, stay off. Read and obey all manufacturer's instructions and safety precautions. Inspect all lifts prior to use. Defective equipment will not be used. A safety harness with shock-absorbing lanyard must be worn while using boom lifts. Harnesses are not required for scissor lifts, provided guardrails are adequate and you do not leave the work platform. Always stay inside the platform railing. Do not use planks or ladders to extend your reach. Always lower the lift before moving. Never use scissor lifts on uneven ground. They are designed for use primarily on concrete floors. Hand and power tools. Inspect cords and tools prior to use. Do not use tools that are faulty in any way. Power tools must be grounded or double insulated. All power tools are to be plugged into a grounded GFCI outlet. Do not use power tools in damp, wet, or explosive atmospheres. Do not lift, lower or carry portable electrical tools by the power cord. Keep all safety guards in place and in proper working order. Use clamps or vices to secure work pieces. Return all tools and other equipment to their proper place after use. Unplug all power tools before changing bits and or grinding discs. Never leave chuck keys in the tool during operation. Do not use a screwdriver as a chisel. Before using sledges, axes, or hammers, be sure the handles are securely fastened with a wedge made of sound material. Do not use a handle extension or cheater on any wrench. Files should be equipped with handles and should not be used as a punch or pry. Cranes and rigging. No employee is permitted to ride on loads, hooks, or slings of any crane, hoist, or derrick. Do not work or stand under any suspended load. Crane operators will avoid swinging loads over people. Inspect all slings and chains prior to use. Do not use defective slings, chains, or rigging. Trenching operations. Each year in the United States, 80 to 100 workers die in trench cave-ins, and thousands of injuries occur in excavating operations. Watch out for excavations in open trenches on the job site. Standard requirements for excavating operations. Any excavation or trench must be properly barricaded or flagged as the work progresses to alert personnel or vehicle traffic to the hazard. Daily inspection of excavations, adjacent areas, and protective systems must be made by a competent person for evidence of any hazardous situations. These inspections must be made prior to work, and as needed throughout the shift. Where hazards are found, such as excavations being improperly barricaded or flagged, employees who are exposed to the hazards must be removed until necessary safeguards are provided or restored. All trenching must be done in accordance with OSHA regulations. When operating equipment or vehicles adjacent to, or approaching an excavation, and the edge of the excavation is not clearly visible to the operator, a warning system such as barricades, hand or mechanical signals, or stop logs must be used. Personnel must never attempt to jump across an open trench or excavation. Personnel must never enter a deep trench or excavation unless it is properly shored, sloped, or benched. Be aware that trench and excavation banks are subject to falling or caving in with little warning, especially after wet weather. Stay well back from excavation edges. Do not carry loads around job sites, especially with excavations, unless you have a clear view of your path of travel. Specific requirements for safe excavation operations. While the excavation is open, utilities must be protected, supported, or removed as necessary to safeguard employees. Always locate underground utilities before digging. Also contact Regional Notification Center in advance. Structural ramps which are provided as a means of entry or exit of employees must be designated by a competent person. If using 2 or more members, planks, they must be connected, of a uniform thickness, and have cleats on the top side to prevent slipping. Structural ramps used for access of equipment or vehicles must be designed by a person qualified in structural design. A stairway, ladder, or ramp must be provided for personnel to exit a trench 4 feet or more in depth and located within 25 feet of any employee. No employee is permitted underneath loads handled by lifting or digging equipment, and must stand clear of any loading operations. Employees shall not work in excavations where water is either accumulated or accumulating unless adequate precautions are taken. Never operate equipment near a trench while personnel are working in the trench. Protection must be provided to guard employees from loose rock, soil, tools, or equipment that could fall or roll into the excavation. Piles should be located at least 2 feet away from the excavation. Do not work under loads handled by lifting or digging equipment. All excavations and trenches 5 feet deep or greater must be shored, sloped, or benched to protect workers from hazards of moving earth. Welding and cutting. Make sure your welding equipment is properly installed, grounded, and in good working condition. Always wear suitable eye protection and clothing. Once you remove your welding helmet, put on safety glasses. Keep your work area clean and free of hazards. Make sure that all compressed gas cylinders are secured to the equipment carriage, wall, or other structural supports. When compressed gas cylinders are empty, close the valve, install the cap and return to well-ventilated storage area. Keep caps on when not in use. Acetylene cylinders and oxygen cylinders should be kept at least 20 feet apart. Do not weld or cut in confined spaces without special precautions and your foreman's authorization. Do not weld on containers that have held combustibles or flammable materials. Use mechanical exhaust ventilation at the point of welding when welding lead, cadmium, chromium, manganese, brass, bronze, zinc or galvanized metals. These metals are highly toxic and their fumes should not be breathed. Make sure all electrical connections are tight and insulated. Do not use cables with frayed, cracked, or bare spots in the insulation. When the electrode holder or cutting torch is not in use, hang it on the brackets provided. Never let it touch a compressed gas cylinder. Dispose of electrode and wire stubs in proper containers, since stubs and rods on the floor are a safety hazard. Use weld curtains to shield others from the light rays produced by your welding. Make sure all compressed gas connections are tight and check for leaks. Do not use hoses with frayed or cracked spots. Keep your leads orderly and out of walkways. Suspend them whenever possible. Do not weld if leads or machine are in or near water. Make sure a portable fire extinguisher is nearby. When flame cutting, sparks can travel 30 to 40 feet. Do not allow flame-cut sparks to hit hoses, regulators, or cylinders. Use oxygen and acetylene or other fuel gases with the appropriate torches and tips only for the purpose intended. Never use acetylene at a pressure in excess of 15 pounds per square inch. Higher pressure can cause an explosion. Never use oil, grease, or any other material on any apparatus or thread fitting in the oxyacetylene or oxy-fuel gas system. Oil and grease in contact with oxygen will cause spontaneous combustion. No burning, welding, or other source of ignition will be applied to any enclosed tank or vessel, even if there are some openings, until it has first been determined that no possibility of explosion exists, and authority for the work is obtained from the foreman or superintendent. Company vehicles. Report all accidents to your supervisor as soon as possible and obtain a police report. Keys must be removed from all unattended vehicles and the vehicles must be locked, unless parking inside the facility. Do not jump from the cab or bed of company vehicles. Always use the steps or a ladder. Inspect your vehicle and report any defects or operating problems to your supervisor so that repairs can be made. Smoking is prohibited during vehicle refueling. If your driver's license is revoked or expired, immediately notify your supervisor and do not drive. Traffic safety. All employees exposed to traffic hazards are required to wear orange or yellow flagging garments, shirts, vests, jackets, at all times. When possible, construction vehicles are to be placed between the employees and traffic to prevent vehicles from entering the work area and hitting members of the crew. All traffic controls will be established in accordance with the Manual of Traffic Controls for construction and maintenance work zones, and maintained throughout the workday. Confined spaces. The leading cause of fatalities in confined spaces is asphyxiation, however, others are toxic or flammable gases, mechanical hazards, fatalities of untrained rescuers, electrocution. Identifying confined spaces. Most hazardous situations occur because no monitoring devices were used, and the confined space was not properly ventilated. Some examples of confined spaces are manholes, boilers, trenches, storage tanks, cupolas, pipelines, septic tanks, ship holds, furnaces, pits, silos, utility vaults. Entry into a confined space is not only when a person passes through an opening, but also when any part of a worker, such as a hand or head, passes into the confined space. The greatest hazard of confined spaces is hazardous atmosphere, which is a common characteristic of a confined space and includes oxygen-deficient atmospheres, flammable gases, and toxic atmospheres. Since some gases or vapors are either lighter or heavier than air, it is necessary to test all levels of a confined space, including the top, middle, and bottom air levels for hazardous atmospheres with calibrated testing equipment used by a trained competent person. If test equipment reveals the presence of either oxygen-deficient or flammable atmosphere, the confined space must be ventilated and retested before workers may enter. There are several methods of ventilation which may be used for confined spaces. Use of fans or blowers and the methods of their use would depend on the size of the confined space to be ventilated and the openings available, the gases to be exhausted, and the source of air used to ventilate. Niche statistics show that 60% of all fatalities in confined spaces happen to the would-be rescuers, and 65% of all confined space fatalities occur because of hazardous atmospheres in which workers failed to use monitoring devices and proper ventilation. Back injury prevention. Some steps to prevent back problems would be stretching, icing the sore area, exercising, practicing good posture, and knowing proper lifting techniques. Size up the load before you lift. Test by lifting one of the corners or pushing. If it is heavy or feels too clumsy, get help from another worker. Make sure your grip is secure. Bend your knees, keeping your back as straight as possible when raising or lowering the object. Do not twist your body when lifting an object. Turn your whole body by changing foot position. Stop lifting immediately if sharp pains develop during, before, or after the lift. Always push a load on a cart or dolly, do not pull it. Split the load into several smaller ones when you can. Use mechanical lifting devices whenever possible. Hand digging tool safety. The choice of the correct style for the job is important for the efficient performance of the work required. A long-handled spade point or square shovel is usually the best choice for excavation work. A spade point shovel is used for digging of compacted soils, whereas a square end shovel is best for moving loose material or grading the bottom of a trench. Keep a safe distance between employees. Use of non-conductive handled tools is required around any energized electrical equipment. Stay alert at all times to what is going on around you while you are digging. Use extreme caution when uncovering buried utilities with hand tools. Use proper hand protection whenever using hand digging tools. Ensure that you have secure footing. Do not use the shovel for a pry bar or digging bar, or place your entire weight downward on the shovel handle for leverage. This may break the handle or cause you to slip or fall, causing injury. Pay attention to where you are throwing your material, especially when working around other people. Hand tool safety. OSHA regulations state that employers shall not issue or permit the use of unsafe hand tools. Following are recommended practices for general hand tool safety. Damaged, worn out, or defective tools should be tagged and removed from service. Do not perform makeshift repairs to tools. Do not use impact tools such as hammers, chisels, punches, or steel stakes that have mushroomed heads. When handing a tool to another person, direct sharp points and cutting edges down and away from yourself and the other person. Carry all sharp tools in a sheath or holster. Do not use a hammer if your hands are oily, greasy, or wet. Do not strike one hammer against another hammer. Never use a hammer as a wedge or a pry bar. Hand saws. When using a hand saw, hold the workpiece firmly against the work table. Do not use an adjustable blade saw, such as a hack saw or a coping saw, if the blade is not taut. Avoid using any saw with a dull blade. Always keep blades clean and sharp. Keep hands and fingers away from the point of cut when using any saw. Never carry a hand saw by the blade. Do not use a screwdriver if your hands are wet, oily, or greasy. Always match the size and type of screwdriver blade to fit the head of the screw. Never hold the workpiece against your body while using a screwdriver. Wrenches. Discard any wrench that has spread, nicked or battered jaws, or if the handle is loose, broken, or bent. Do not use a shim to make a wrench fit the fastener. Do not use pliers that are cracked, broken, or sprung. Never use pliers as a wrench or a hammer. Do not attempt to force pliers by using a hammer on them. Underground utilities. All personnel involved in the operation must be familiar with procedures regarding locating and exposing utilities, as well as protection from exposed utilities. All personnel should be familiar with emergency and evacuation procedures for the excavation area and the area occupants. Employees involved in excavation should be familiar with the color code for specific utilities as follows. Red, electric distribution, transmission, and municipal system lines. Yellow, gas, oil, and petroleum, dangerous materials, and product and steam lines. Orange, telephone, telegraph, police and fire communications, and cable television. Blue, water and slurry systems. Green, sewer systems. Purple, reclaimed water. It is the duty of excavators to maintain these markings supplied by the locator service, and in the event of removal or damage, to notify the locator of the need for remarking. When the excavator is approaching a utility line, extreme care must be taken and any mechanical excavator must be stopped 2 feet before the indicated position of the line. Utility lines must then be carefully exposed manually to determine their exact location before proceeding. Any utilities exposed by excavation must be supported, if necessary, conspicuously marked to ensure the safety of workers, and backfilled with appropriate material as soon as possible. Excavators must report immediately to the utility operator any break-in, dent, gouge, or other damage to lines, or to the cathodic shield made or discovered during the course of work. If a break occurs in any hazardous utility line, work must be shut down immediately and personnel evacuated to a safe distance. Personnel and occupants must be alerted immediately as to any emergency that may exist during the course of work. If a water line break should occur in a trench, trenching operations should be halted and the affected area evacuated until deemed safe by a competent person to re-enter the trench. All underground utilities in the work area must be located prior to digging. Utility companies must be notified of your intention to excavate within established, or customary, response times. Check local codes. When excavations approach the estimated location of underground utility, the exact location must be determined and marked by safe and acceptable means. Usually this is done by a reputable utilities locating and marking service such as USIC. Good housekeeping general guidelines. Never leave trash, garbage, or debris haphazardly around your work area. If garbage, trash, and debris must accumulate, designate a predetermined disposal area and dispose of all trash, garbage, and hazards in the designated disposal area. Clean up any spills or leaks immediately to eliminate any hazard of slip or fall injuries. Ensure that any cords or trip hazards are not left in aisles or walkways or where individuals may injure themselves. Remove boxes and other hazards from aisles, walkways, or stairways. Ensure that exits are never blocked or locked. Watch out for accumulation of fire hazards such as greasy rags, chemicals, and electrical hazards. Ensure that any flammables or hazardous chemicals are stored and disposed of properly. Ensure that all machine and equipment guards are in place and secure. Keep tool boxes and tool cribs neat, clean, and orderly. Keep storage areas clean and organized. Immediately clean up any glass, nails, or other laceration or puncture hazards. Floor holes or openings must be guarded by a cover, grating, guardrail, or equivalent on all sides except at the entrance to stairways or ladders. Securing loads. Following are guidelines for securing loads to prevent loss and keep them from becoming a road hazard. Secure any large items which may provide wind resistance, or catch air and be dislodged from pickup beds with rope, straps, chain, bungee cords, etc. Use at least 2 tie-downs for any cargo regardless of its length. Any item which extends more than 3 feet beyond the body of your vehicle must be flagged with high visibility material. Use a tarp to cover numerous small articles or materials which cannot be enclosed, and secure tarp. Ensure that the anchor points used for tie-downs are suitably strong and secure for the purpose. Equipment or material carried in a truck bed must also be secured from shilling or being thrown forward in a sudden stop. Dump truck drivers must always clean off the dump apron and sideboards, secure the gate, and check for rocks between your duals before proceeding on a public thoroughfare. Do a walk-around inspection before leaving to ensure that all items are put away and secured. When transporting cargo long distances, check your cargo frequently to ensure that it has not shifted, and that it is still secure. Materials which are too bulky or which are configured in such a way that will not allow their shipping in a standard closed trailer must be shipped on a flatbed trailer. These loads must be secured to the trailer using binders and chains or straps. Do not load heavy equipment on transports unless trained to safely operate the particular machine to be loaded. If using a handle extension or cheater bar, ensure that the extension is gripped firmly at all times and do not stand in front of, or over, the extension. Ensure that the binder is firmly locked in the secured position before releasing the extension. If securing a load such as pipe, lugs, etc. which is over 27 feet in length, a minimum of 4 binders must be used, and spaced equal distances on the load with 2 bindings near the ends of the load. Within 15 minutes of leaving the loading area with a bound load, the operator should recheck the binders, chains, or straps, and security of the load to ensure that no shifting of the load or loosening of the bindings has occurred. The combined strength of all tie-downs must be strong enough to lift 1.5 times the weight of the load being hauled. Do not exceed the rated weight limit for accessories, chains, straps, or binders. Bolts or nails must not be placed between 2 links to shorten or join chains. Broken chains must not be spliced by inserting a bolt between 2 links with the head of the bolt and nut sustaining the load, or by passing one link through another and inserting a bolt or nail to hold it. Common hazards: chemical, toxic; chemical, flammable; chemical, corrosive; explosion, chemical reaction; explosion, overpressurization; electrical, shock circuit; electrical, fire; electrical, static or ESD; electrical, loss of power; weather phenomena, snow, rain, wind, or ice; mechanical and vibration, chafing and fatigue; mechanical failure; mechanical noise; struck by, mass acceleration; struck against; temperature extreme, heat or cold; visibility; ergonomics, strain; fall, slip or trip; fire or heat. Job safety analysis, JSA, is also known as job hazard analysis. During this analysis, each task of a specific job is examined to identify hazards and to determine the safest way to do the job. Job safety analysis involves the following steps. 1. Select the job. 2. Break down the job into a sequence of steps. 3. Identify the hazards. 4. Define preventive measures. Job hazard assessment is a technique that focuses on job tasks as a way to identify hazards before they occur. It focuses on the relationship between the worker, the task, the tools, and the work environment. A job hazard assessment can be conducted on many jobs in your workplace. Priority should go to the following types of jobs. Jobs with the highest injury or illness rates. Jobs with the potential to cause severe or disabling injuries or illness, even if there is no history of previous accidents. Jobs in which one simple human error could lead to a severe accident or injury. Jobs that are new to your operation or have undergone changes in processes and procedures. Jobs complex enough to require written instructions. Periodically reviewing your job hazard assessment ensures that it remains current and continues to help reduce workplace accidents and injuries. It is very important to involve your employees in the hazard assessment process by reviewing accident history, outlining steps or tasks, and potential hazards with them. Here is an example of a hazard scenario. In the metal shop environment, while clearing a snag, trigger, a worker's hand, exposure, comes into contact with a rotating pulley. It pulls his hand into the machine and severs his fingers. Consequences, quickly. To perform a job hazard assessment, you would ask, what can go wrong? The worker's hand could come into contact with a rotating object that catches it and pulls it into the machine. What are the consequences? The worker could receive a severe injury and lose fingers and hands. How could it happen? The accident could happen as a result of the worker trying to clear a snag during operations or as part of a maintenance activity while the pulley is operating. Obviously, this hazard scenario could not occur if the pulley is not rotating. What are other contributing factors? This hazard occurs very quickly. It does not give the worker much opportunity to recover or prevent it once his hand comes into contact with the pulley. After reviewing your list of hazards with the employee, consider what control methods will eliminate or reduce them. It may be necessary to hire a professional to perform the job hazard assessment if your employees are involved in many different or complex processes. Information obtained from a job hazard assessment is useless unless hazard control measures recommended in the assessment are incorporated into the tasks. Managers and supervisors should recognize that not all hazard controls are equal. The order of precedence and effectiveness of hazard control is the following. Engineering controls include the elimination or minimization of the hazard, enclosure or isolation of the hazard, removal or redirection of the hazard. Administrative controls include written operating procedures, work permits, and safe work practices. Monitoring the use of highly hazardous materials. Alarms, signs, and warnings. The buddy system. And training. Protective equipment such as respirators, hearing protection, protective clothing, safety glasses, and hard hats are acceptable as a control method. The scope of your self-inspections should include the following: processing, receiving, shipping, and storage. Building and grounds conditions. Housekeeping program. Electricity. Lighting. Heating and ventilation. Machinery. Personnel. Hand and power tools. Chemicals. Fire prevention. Maintenance. Transportation. Beat the heat. In order to work safely and effectively during long, hot summer work days, certain precautions must be taken. Fluids and salts, electrolytes, lost through heavy sweating must be continuously replaced. Commercially available sports drinks such as Gatorade contain the extra salts. Drinking plenty of these kinds of fluids and doing everything needed to keep your core body temperature within manageable levels is imperative. When it is determined a person is suffering from hyperthermia, it is vitally important to reduce the victim's core body temperature immediately and then control the secondary effects. This must be done before permanent injury to the internal organs occurs. Hyperthermia is an emergency situation, with death being a possibility. Contact emergency medical services immediately and get the person out of the heat. Place cool damp towels over the head, on the neck, between the thighs, and under the armpits. Heat cramps phase 1 also includes heat syncope. This condition results from overexertion and heavy sweating. Heat cramps are severe muscle spasms that often begin suddenly in the hands, calves, or feet. They are painful and disabling. Heat exhaustion phase 2, also called heat prostration. This condition results from prolonged exposure to extreme heat for many hours. This causes excessive fluid loss from heavy sweating, leading to increased fatigue, weakness, anxiety, drenching sweats, low blood pressure, faintness, and sometimes collapse. Heat stroke phase 3, sometimes called sunstroke. Danger medical emergency. This life-threatening condition is caused by overexertion and overexposure in extreme heat environments. Heat stroke is imminent when the core body temperature approaches 106 degrees Fahrenheit, 41 degrees Celsius. Any higher may result in coma, or even death. The symptoms are dizziness, weakness, emotional instability, nausea and or vomiting, confusion, delirium, blurred vision, convulsions, collapse, and unconsciousness. The skin is flushed, hot to the touch, and at first may be covered with sweat that soon dries. Be aware of these warning signals. The heat equation. High temperature plus high humidity plus physical work equals heat illness. Mild dehydration, drinking plain water may be all that is needed. However, when both water and electrolyte losses have occurred, salt, especially sodium and potassium, must also be replaced. If you see this happening, you should lay the worker down and loosen the worker's clothing. They need plenty of water, and paramedics should be contacted. To maintain water balance within the body, workers who are not excessively sweating should drink at least 1 quart of water. To protect against dehydration, drink 1.5 to 2 quarts of water while working on the job site. Profuse sweating can dramatically increase the amount of water lost during the day. Always have plenty of cool, portable water available at each job site. Make sure a drinking water label is stamped on the cooler complying with OSHA regulations. Always do the heaviest work during the coolest part of the day. Encourage fellow workers to drink water while working together. Damage to the kidneys, liver, and brain can occur from dehydration. Consult a doctor about safely replacing fluids if you have heart or kidney problems. Overhydration. Overhydration occurs when the body's intake of water is greater than its output. Excess water in the body causes the sodium in the bloodstream to become overdiluted. Limit intake of water when suffering from heart, kidney, or liver problems. Do not drink more than 2 gallons of water in a single workday. Symptoms from overhydration can be mental confusion, seizures, and coma. Contact a doctor to prescribe a diuretic to increase excretion of excess water. Basic first aid is used for treatment of non-life-threatening situations to prevent injuries from being made worse. First aid is only that, first aid, and is not intended as final treatment. The following are recommended procedures for basic first aid. Assess the situation. Put on any personal protection equipment which may be necessary for the situation, such as latex gloves for protection from blood-borne pathogens. Determine the cause of the injury and eliminate any hazards that may affect you as the first aid provider. If the victim is not in any danger, do not move them. Treat life-threatening situations first: severe bleeding, cardiac arrest, or if the victim has stopped breathing. Do not become a victim yourself. Leave rescue to trained personnel. Call for help. If you are alone, treat any life-threatening injuries first, then go for help. If you are not alone, send someone for help immediately. Cuts and bleeding. Pressure and elevation are used to restrict the flow of blood to the injured part to control blood loss. Apply a clean dressing to the wound with firm, steady pressure, and hold the dressing in place for up to 20 minutes. If there is an object in the wound, apply pressure alongside. Raise the injured part and support it while maintaining pressure to the wound. Do not remove the object as this may increase bleeding. If bleeding continues, use pressure points on arteries and send for medical assistance. Once bleeding stops, apply a clean dressing and seek medical treatment as soon as possible. If the victim is conscious, lay them down with legs elevated. If the victim is cold, cover them with a blanket or spare clothing. Reassure the victim to keep them calm. Any burn victim will benefit from the following first aid treatment. Cool the burned area with clean running water for 1020 minutes. Carefully remove any restrictive clothing or jewelry from the injured area. Do not remove anything which is stuck to the wound. Do not use any lotions or ointments. Use burn gel if available. Don't break blisters or interfere with damaged tissue. Cover the wound with a sterile dressing, but do not apply pressure. If the victim may have a fractured bone, and must be moved to receive medical help, gently support the injured part by hand. Place the victim in as comfortable position as possible with injured part supported with rolled up blankets or clothing. Treat the victim for shock, but do not move the injured part. Make the victim as comfortable as possible and wait for medical help. Accident investigation policy. The primary focus of any accident investigation should be the determination of the facts surrounding the incident and the lessons that can be learned to prevent future similar occurrences. The focus of the investigation should never be to place blame. This company will investigate all lost time injuries. Fatalities and catastrophes must be reported to OSHA within 8 hours. Serious accidents must be reported to OSHA within 24 hours. An accident investigation plan should be set in place that includes these procedures. Who should be notified of the accident? Who is authorized to notify outside agencies? fire, police, etc. Who is assigned to conduct investigations? Training required for accident investigators. Who receives and acts on investigation reports? Timetables for conducting hazard correction. This plan has 5 major steps. 1. Secure the accident scene. 2. Gather information. When gathering information, you should interview witnesses separately, and review related documents such as training or maintenance records. 3. Develop a sequence of events. This should include a step-by-step description of what happened leading up to the accident. 4. Analyze the accident. The main point of this step is to determine the root cause of the accident. Root causes are the underlying system weaknesses that have somehow contributed to the existence of hazardous conditions and unsafe behaviors that represent surfaces causes of accidents. 5. Preventative actions. All of the work done to this point culminates with recommendations to prevent similar accidents from happening in the future. T is crucial that, after making recommendations to eliminate or reduce the surface causes, that the same procedure is used to recommend actions to correct the root causes. Driving company vehicles. Employees who operate company vehicles have an obligation to properly care for and operate equipment in a responsible manner. Any disruption in the smooth flow of work caused by accidents or lack of maintenance affects the financial stability of any company and jeopardizes employees' safety. Vehicle inspections are the first line of defense in assuring that a motor vehicle is in safe operating condition. A regular program of vehicle inspection and vehicle condition reports are an important part of the vehicle maintenance process that keeps company vehicles safely on the road. Accidents involving vehicles continue to be the #1 cause of on-the-job fatalities year after year. 1 out of every 5 drivers will be involved in a vehicle accident this year. Always wear your seat belt, whether the driver or a passenger. Motor vehicle crashes are the leading cause of death among people 44 and younger and the #1 cause of head and spinal cord injury in all ages. Approximately 35,000 people die in motor vehicle crashes each year. About 50%, 17,000, could be saved if they wear their seat belts. Motorists are 25 times more likely to be killed or seriously injured when thrown clear than when they remain in the vehicle. In a 30 miles per hour collision, an unbelted 160-pound person can strike another passenger, the windshield, or the dashboard with 4,800 pounds of force. The above information, as well as common sense, should tell us that seat belts are a vital piece of safety equipment. It is a needless and unlawful risk to operate a motor vehicle of any type without the protection of a properly fastened seat belt. We are committed to safety, and want to ensure every employee goes home at the end of the day. Welcome to the team.